Walking along a street you've known for years, there's a moment where your pace slows without you deciding to slow down. It's not because something is in your way, and not because you're looking for anything in particular. The road stretches out the same way it always has. The buildings stand where they've always been, and the rhythm of people moving past you feels familiar enough to not require attention. But something about it doesn't feel exactly the same. You glance around more carefully, almost out of instinct. The coffee shop on the corner still has the same name, but the color of the sign looks newer, slightly brighter than what you remember. A small store a few steps ahead has changed its display, though you can't recall when that happened. The pavement under your feet feels the same, but somehow the space feels less certain, like it belongs to a version of time you don't fully recognize anymore. There's no clear reason to stop, and yet your attention lingers. Not in a dramatic way, just enough to make you aware that you're not simply passing through. You're noticing. It's a quiet kind of noticing, the kind that doesn't interrupt your day, but doesn't fully let go either. The street hasn't transformed into something unfamiliar. If anything, it still looks almost identical. But that almost is enough to create a small distance between what you remember and what you see now. And in that distance, something subtle appears. You realize you're not just looking at the street as it is. You're also holding on to how it used to feel, even if you can't fully describe that feeling anymore. Both versions exist at the same time, overlapping in a way that's difficult to separate. The moment passes quietly. You keep walking, but something about it stays with you, even if you don't try to hold on to it. The rest of the day continues the way it usually does. There are things waiting for your attention, small tasks that need to be completed, messages that quietly gather until you respond to them. You move from one part of the day to another without thinking too much about it, following a rhythm that has become familiar over time. But the feeling from earlier doesn't disappear completely. It lingers somewhere in the background, returning in small, almost unnoticeable ways. Later, when you pass another street that used to feel just as familiar, the same quiet awareness appears again. Not strong enough to stop you, but enough to make you look a little longer than usual. There was a time when places didn't feel like this. Not because they were different, but because you didn't experience them with this kind of distance. You walk through them without comparing them to anything else. They existed in the present, and that was enough. Now there's something else layered into the experience, a sense that what you're seeing is not just what's in front of you, but also what remains from before. The buildings, the streets, the small details, they carry traces of different moments, even if you can't point to exactly when those moments happened. Sometimes it shows up in simple ways. You notice that a place feels quieter than it used to, even though there are still people around, or you realize you no longer recognize the faces that pass you by, even in places where you once saw the same people every day. The environment hasn't changed drastically, but your relationship to it has shifted just enough to make that difference visible. You still follow the same routes, take the same turns, and move through the same spaces. But there's a quiet awareness that these places no longer belong entirely to the present. They carry a kind of layering where what was and what is exist together without fully blending, and without trying to analyze it, you begin to notice how often this happens. At some point it becomes difficult to ignore the question that quietly sits beneath these moments. whether the streets themselves have changed or whether something else has shifted in the way you experience them. Because the changes you notice are often too small to explain the feeling on their own. A sign repainted, a shop rearranged, a building renovated. These are normal things. They happen all the time, everywhere. But the feeling that comes with noticing them feels more personal than that. It feels like you're seeing things from a slightly different place than before. There was a time when familiarity felt stable. A place stayed familiar simply because you had been there many times. The more you returned, the more certain it felt. You didn't question it. You didn't compare it. It just existed as part of your routine. Now familiarity feels less fixed. It's still there, but it doesn't feel as solid as it once did. You recognize the place, but at the same time, you recognize that your connection to it has changed. The way you stand in it, the way you move through it, even the way you notice things, it all feels slightly different. And maybe that's where the quiet distance comes from. Not from the street itself, but from the space between who you were, when everything felt stable, and who you are now, noticing that stability has shifted. It's not a dramatic realization. There's no clear moment where everything becomes obvious. It's something that unfolds slowly, through small observations that don't seem significant on their own. You begin to understand that what you're experiencing isn't just about change. It's about awareness of change. The kind that doesn't arrive all at once, but builds gradually, until it becomes impossible to completely ignore. And even then, it doesn't demand anything from you. It simply exists, quietly present in the way you move through familiar places. As these moments continue to appear, they begin to connect in a way that feels less like coincidence and more like a pattern you've slowly grown into. It's no longer just one street or one afternoon. It's something that repeats across different places, different days, different parts of your life. You start to notice how often familiarity carries this quiet sense of distance now. Places you've known for years begin to feel like markers, not just of location, but of time. Each one holds something from before, even if that before is no longer clear in your memory. The street you walk through after work, the one that once felt like a simple transition between two parts of your day, now feels like something more layered. It's still the same path, but it holds traces of earlier versions of your routine. Days when you walked a little faster, or paid less attention, or felt slightly different without realizing it. The changes aren't always visible. Sometimes nothing about the place looks different at all. And yet, the feeling shifts anyway. You might stand at a corner you've passed countless times and realize you no longer feel the same urgency to move through it. Or you notice that a place you once associated with something specific now feels more neutral, as if the meaning it carried has slowly faded. It's not that the place has lost something, it's that your connection to it has quietly changed over time. And that change doesn't happen in a single moment. It unfolds gradually through days that feel ordinary, through routines that don't draw attention to themselves. There's no clear point where you can say, this is when it became different. It just becomes different. What makes it noticeable isn't the change itself, but the moment you become aware of it. The moment where the present and the past briefly overlap, and you can feel the distance between them without needing to measure it. In those moments, the street feels like more than just a place. It feels like something that has existed alongside you, quietly witnessing different stages of your life, without asking you to acknowledge it. And when you do notice it, even briefly, there's a kind of stillness that follows. Not heavy, not emotional in an obvious way, but steady enough to make you pause. Because it reminds you that change doesn't always arrive in ways you can clearly see. Sometimes it shows up in these small, almost invisible differences. In the way a place feels slightly unfamiliar, even when it looks the same. In the way you realize that something has moved forward without announcing itself. And in that realization, there's no need to hold on to anything or to figure anything out. There's just the quiet awareness that time has been moving, even when it didn't feel like it was. After a while, the moment settles back into the background, the way these things always do. You continue walking, following the path you were already on, letting your attention return to the rest of the day. The street becomes just a street again. The buildings return to being part of the scenery. Everything looks as ordinary as it did before you noticed anything at all. But something about that brief pause doesn't disappear completely. It stays in a quieter way, not as a clear thought, but as a small shift in how you see things. A subtle awareness that familiar places don't remain fixed in the way they once seemed to. That they move, slowly, along with everything else. And maybe that's why these moments feel the way they do. Not because something is lost, or because something needs to be understood, but because, for a second, you become aware of something that usually goes unnoticed. The way time passes through ordinary places. The way familiarity changes without asking you to pay attention. The way you continue moving forward, even when nothing around you seems to demand it. There's no conclusion to hold on to. No clear meaning to take away. Just the quiet recognition that something has shifted, and that you were there long enough to notice it. And then, like everything else, the moment gently lets go.